Hello everybody, in this video we're going to explore different ways to use watercolour. Now watercolour is one of my absolute favourite mediums. It's so versatile, you can do so much with it, and there's lots of random accidents that can happen which are really interesting. It's also very low on mess, which I know your teachers like. Right, so what do you need? So first of all, you are going to need your sketchbook or sketchbook paper or watercolour paper. To do this, you're going to need also 2 water pots I like to use, but if you've got just one, that's fine too. Your watercolour palette, of course, and a watercolour brush. I've got 3 here. There's a number 4 size, a number 10 size, and this one here is a number 6 size. Okay, but any one will do really for this. You're going to need a pencil, you're going to need a cup or something round to draw around, or maybe you've got 2D shapes or something like that, you can draw around those. So yeah, I'm just going to show you quickly. I'm just going to draw around that. So I'm just going to draw a lot of circles for so I can have a go at using watercolour paint in different ways in each one. I've got salt here as well. This is kind of the kind of more coarse salt, where you've got kind of little rocks of salt in that one, and this is your normal table salt, which is much finer grains that you've got there. As well, I've got a ruler here. I've got what else? Got a bit of bubble wrap to have a go with some texture, and some cling film, which they will have in the kitchen in your school. I've also got, never ever be without this, a paper towel or kitchen roll. That can really help you out as well. Okay, so if your watercolour palette isn't clean, so when you open this one's clean because I've already used it today, but you might find that it's not clean here. You will need to paint water on it, basically, on the bits that aren't clean, and get your paper towel and wipe it off clean. You would need to do this similar thing if the colours aren't clean. I don't know if you can see, there's a bit of yellow on the white there. To get that off, I just paint water on it. That's all I do. Paint water on it, and then it's gone. And the way to, always the best way to clean your brush is to, I always say to children, paint the bottom of your water pot with the brush like that. Paint the bottom with the brush gently. Okay, and that gets it all out. And then I always say you need to wipe some of that water off on the side like that, and do it once, turn it over, and again. And that way it's not absolutely dripping with water then. Another way, of course, to get the water off the brush would be just to gently dab it on your paper towel, so you don't have too much water on the brush. Those are ways of controlling how much water you have on the brush. Okay, so let's get to it. I'm going to draw more circles then, and we'll get started. So I've managed to get 6 circles onto my page, and I'm going to start by just using the dry paper. So I'm not going to wet it first, I'm just going to get the paint straight on there. So I'm going to go straight on with some red then. Now I hope you can see I'm not pressing really hard with the brush here. You wreck the brush that way. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some red in the middle, just a blob of red in the middle, like that. I'm going to get even more on there, so in the middle of one of the circles. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a second brush. If you don't have a second brush, that's all right, you just have to clean your first brush. I'm going to dip that in one of the water pots. I'm going to paint water around it. So water around the red blob. There we go. I've started, I don't know if you've noticed, I've started at the edge by the pencil, and I'm going to get closer and closer and closer. Let's see what happens when the water starts to hit the red blob. There we go. The two start to join together and start to mix a little bit. Okay, we'll let that dry. try out and see what happens with that. Okay, next one then, I am going to do another red blob in the middle. In fact, rather than a red blob, I'm going to do almost dry brush. Dry brush is where there's hardly any paint on. So maybe you've just used it for something else like we have. And I'm pressing down with it, and I'm twisting it and turning it, and you'll see all of the brush hairs start to move around. Don't press too hard or you'll wreck the brush, and you'll get different textures with it. So that's an interesting one as well. Okay, so I'll move on then. I'll clean my brush. A paper towel as well. All right, next one then is I'm going to put more red on. And this time I'm going to have quite a bit of water on it. I'm going to stand it up a bit and let the paint run. So I need more water. There you go. I hope you can see that. It's starting to run. So I'm just going to let it run a little bit. Oh, I say a little bit. It ran a lot. Okay. But that's all right. We can just wipe that off. Okay. Probably should have done the running one of the bottom circles, never mind. Okay. So that's paint dripping. Okay, this time, so as you can see, I don't think, yeah, hopefully you can see that I've still got one pot of clean water and one pot of water where it's got red paint in it. Okay, so I've got one clean brush and one that's got red paint on. This time, I'm going to do the whole circle. I'm going to paint with water first. And now, like that red blob there, I'm going to put that red blob back in. And see how different it is. You should see that the paint starts to bleed outwards into the wetness surrounding it, which is a lovely kind of effect. One of my favourites. Right, okay, let's try and add other things in. So this time, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the whole thing, the whole circle. There we go. I want lots of redness in there, so I'm going to make sure it's nice and red. And with this one, I think what I'll do is I'll try two types of salt. So I'll try the rock salt, which is this one. I'll put a few into my hands. Now, you might not have any of this in your school, but that's okay. You can just use the normal table salt. I'm going to put some of the rock salt on one side. Do you know what? I'm going to add more water around it. It needs more water. So for the salt to have a real effect, it needs to be watery. So I'm going to put more water on the whole thing. There. Okay. So there's the rock salt. Try that. And then I'll get your table salt. Okay. So I'm going to, instead of pouring it straight on, I'm going to pour it into my hand first. Okay. All right. And then I'll just pinch it and put some on it. Now, I've got some left in my hand. I don't need that. That's going to go in the bin. Just because you've got some in your hand doesn't mean you have to put it all on. Right, so that one's salt. Rock salt on that side, and we've got table salt the smaller grain salt on that side. Right, next one then, let's go for, I'm going to paint the circle again. And I'm painting quite quickly, but I'm not pressing really hard with the brush, because that's when the hairs of the brush start to come off. We don't want that. Okay, so I'm having it lots of colour, but still nice and wet. And I think with this one, I'm going to do a bit of bubble wrap on one side of it, like that, and half of it. I'm going to leave it there and let it dry on there. And on the other side, I'm going to get a little bit of cling film, if I can get it started. Hold on. So the cling film, I'm going to just kind of scrunch it up, and I'm going to make sure it's nice and wet on that side too. Okay, scrunch it up, and I'm going to just stick that down. Press it down, leave it there, let it dry. So I'll write down what each one is, but yeah, have a go at those. So this page is dried, and as you can see, I've written on what I did with each one. That says blob in the middle and paint water around it. A bit less interesting, that one. This one I thought worked out well. This is paint the whole circle with water and then paint a blob in the middle, and then it just goes in its own direction, really. Went off in all sorts of different directions. Really interesting. This is dry brush, where there isn't much water on the brush. This one is where I let it run. This one has table salt, which is just the fine grain salt, and then rock salt. So there's some texture in it. I thought it would work out better. I might try that again. Cling film on this side, can't really see much there. And bubble wrap, so you can see a bit of texture in those. And I've written my name at the bottom there. So if yours is on a piece of paper, this is in a sketchbook, but if it's on a piece of paper, you want to put this somewhere at the side, maybe the windowsill or a drying rack if you've got one in your school, out to dry, and then start a new one. So they take a while to dry, so it would be good if you did one in your sketchbook and the next one use paper. So what I've got here is watercolour paper. This is 300 grams per square meter, and this has come through a normal school art supplier, and I've drawn some more circles on this, and I've overlapped a couple of circles so we can overlap some colours. I've also done the same thing again in my sketchbook. So now what I want to do is do the same thing on the sketchbook paper as I'm going to do on the watercolour paper. This paper is thicker, and you can probably tell it's textured there. So it's not a smooth surface, it's quite a bumpy surface. Because it's thicker, it will absorb more water. And also, the thicker paper is brilliant for watercolour because it means that you can do more on it. You can get more water on it, and you can use more paint on it because it's thicker. It's less likely to go all the way through the page like it might do in sketchbook paper. So I've got everything I need. I'm going to do the same thing on the sketchbook as on the heavier watercolour paper. So show you what I'm going to do. These are exactly the same things I've written down. So I've prepared some dry layers here, so I painted these on in advance and let them dry. So this one's going to be water on dry paint and salt, and that one's going to be water on wet paint and salt. That's going to be blue going over red on that one. Down here we're going to have red going over blue, so we'll go, see if the effects are the same. Here I'm going to blow part of this with a straw. I'm going to put paint on it and blow it around with a straw, and I'm also going to scrape it a little bit with a ruler. And here I'm going to put a leaf on some wet paint and just leave it there and take that off when it's dry. So that's basically it. So what do I need? Well, I need some leaves, don't I? I've got my paint palette and paintbrush and water pot as usual. I need a straw. In school you've probably got art straws, the paper ones that you could cut down to make them shorter and let the children blow it around. I'm also going to actually, I haven't written it down on here, but I'm going to flick some paint. You need one of the stiffer brushes, a brush that you would normally use for acrylic paint or ready mix paint, and you'll know it because it'll be the stiffer one. They often get called hog hair brushes, but the watercolor brushes are much smoother and softer, aren't they? And this is a bit rougher and yeah, harder. Right, okay, so that's it. Let's get to it. Okay, so I've let it all dry. Let's take a look at what we've got. So this is water on dry paint that was dropped on with salt. It's made a bit of a rough texture, same here, but not much difference. I find it a bit hit and miss with salt, to be honest. Here, this is water dropped onto wet paint and salt dropped onto that. And again, there's a tiny bit of texture, but not much. You can get better effects than that with salt. I'll show you. Here's one here that was given to me. So that's got salt on it there. That's a good one. And that one has got salt on it too. Okay, and here then you can see we've got the blue over the red, and it's made a kind of a purple colour. And going the opposite way, the red over blue there, it's made more of a slightly violet colour, I suppose, more of a reddy purple, that's a bluey purple. And I flicked some blue paint over it as well, which I think works really well. I used this stiffer brush to do that. Here we've got the leaf then, so I'll lift this off. Now with this one, what I had to do, you can see a bit of the leaf on there. But what I had to do with that one, yeah, it's got some nice texture to it. What I had to do was press it down hard. So what I did was I had the leaf on, and then I got my paper towel. I kind of had it folded in half, and I just pressed down really hard on it, and just kind of rubbed it on there, just to try and really make it print something on there. And then here, this is blowing with the straw, this is scraping with the ruler, some nice textures and effects there. So on this heavier paper then, you can see that you get the texture comes out a bit better because the paper's already textured itself. I think that's the main difference. The colour is slightly different as well, I think. More of it is absorbed, so it's you get slightly brighter colour, a redder red, I suppose. This one's came out quite well. Yeah, with those leaves there. You can see those okay, I think. And again, I had to press down really hard on those. Okay, so we've done all together there. We've done all together. Look at that, we've done 3 pages of just exploring ways to use watercolour paint. So there are lots of other things that you could do. We use leaves and a ruler, cling film, bubble wrap, but there are other, get creative. There are other materials that you could use as well. So yeah, I think the thing I'd like to explore more is combining different colours and flicking a bit more paint. But yeah, and blowing the paint as well. I think that'll be really, really effective. Okay, so good luck with it.